Hi there. Day 12. Well, I had a fairly good day today, language learning wise. You can hear my wife playing the piano in the background. We just came back from dinner at our son's place with my son's mother-in-law and, of course, his family, and we had a great time there, as usual. Nice meal. Read a fair amount in that book with the patterns, that Japanese book. Read 3 articles from Chosun Ilbo, and I'm starting to get that feeling, you know, when you have that feeling that you have the wind in your sails, that I'm understanding these newspaper articles better. I have a couple of discussions lined up for tomorrow with our tutors at Link. We'll see how those go. I had an interview for an hour with David Mansoure, who is part of that sort of community of polyglots on the internet, and he is involved in a project. And the subject of our discussion was age and language learning. And of course, I said that age has essentially very little to do with language learning. Perhaps in the first 7, 8, 9 years of your life, your brain is more flexible. But thereafter, I'm firmly convinced that it's more attitude. Sometimes people are in their 30s or 40s. They resist the language. Why does that language say it differently? Why, that's a stupid way to say it. They cling to their own culture. They don't want to look silly. Those kinds of attitudinal things are the obstacle, not anything in our brains. I believe that I'm a better language learner today at age 68 than I was at age 16. Not only because I have more experience, but also because the technology has changed. The availability of, MP3 players, the internet, and all of these kinds of things, it just makes it so much easier to learn. And that brings up another subject, which I'm going to talk about briefly, and that is optimism. I believe I'm a better language learner today than I was at 16. I believe I can do it. And I think the belief that we can do things is extremely important to language learning. In other words, I believe I can get better. I believe that every day that I put effort in, whether it's an hour or 3 hours, reading, listening, speaking, however much I stumble, however much I struggle, I know that it is contributing towards my improvement. I'm convinced of it. I'm an optimist. I have given myself a 90-day period in which to make a significant improvement. I will make that significant improvement. I'm quite convinced. I'm an optimist. And I think optimism is important to language learning. I think optimism is important to life. I get very annoyed when I read these sort of negative comments about today, that, we're ruining the planet, politicians are all corrupt, it's not worthwhile voting, capitalism, consumerism is destroying the world. That is just absolute nonsense. By any standard, we are so much better off today than at any time before in history. Life expectancy was 30. Half or more of children who were born died. If there was a poor harvest some year because it was cold or rained too much, people had nothing to eat. Nowadays, we can eat produce from California, Spain, Indonesia, it doesn't matter. And then there are people who complain we should only eat the local produce. What a bunch of nonsense again. Therefore, if you're in Sweden, all you get to eat is potatoes and herring. You shouldn't have citrus fruit because it's not local. Of course we're better off to be able to access food from all over the world. And those countries that export their produce, they're better off because they're able to export it. It's a wonderful world. We have 7.5 billion people on the planet. For the longest time we had the same, a few 100 million. So, of course it has an impact on certain ecosystems. But that doesn't mean the world is being destroyed. It means that there's been a growth in the human population which has perhaps caused certain constraints on some other populations. We should try to mitigate that. We should try to mitigate it. And there's been efforts in many countries to revive populations of certain wildlife and so forth and so on. But it's no disaster. Even this great global warming thing, we don't know what these consequences might be. There's a number of different scenarios. What we do know is that more and more people are living longer and longer. People are eating better. People are less hungry than they used to be at any time in history. The sort of noble savage living in the bush, he was forever in danger of dying from hunger, from disease in the next battle. Warfare was endemic. Violence was endemic. I mean, we have a much better life today despite all the problems. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't work to resolve the problems. Yes, there is inequality, and most countries have some form of redistributing wealth and providing, benefits to people and so forth and so on. But overwhelming, people can travel now. I'm listening to, sort of on my MP3 player, listening to, Mozart. Who could listen to Mozart back in whenever he lived, 1780 or something? The few wealthy at the court. And now anyone who wants to listen to Mozart can listen to Mozart. Not anyone, but a very high percentage of people can access that sound and listen to it on some kind of device. You get the people on the internet saying, why vote? That's stupid. Don't believe the BS the government tells you, and the system is crooked and everything is crooked. Well, then go and be a politician. But vote. Because what's the alternative to voting? A revolution in the streets? What does that do? That's power to the loudest and the noisiest and the troublemakers? No, go and do your duty. And if you want to be a politician, if you think they're all corrupt, you go and be a politician. So, all I'm saying is, nothing is perfect. And when we try to impose perfection, we usually get tremendous distortions, as we saw in the 20th century. The world we live in today, with all its imperfections, is amazing. It's amazingly wonderful. And I think we should enjoy the means that we have and the increasing, opportunities to solve problems, to spread education. So I'm an optimist. I think we live in a wonderful world, and I think it can only get better. And I think we need to stay positive, not only about our language learning, but about the world we live in as a whole. Thank you. Tomorrow I'll get back to language learning and the 90-day challenge.